Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining me. This is your host, ID Jester. Appreciate you checking out our video. Today we got a special episode. We're going to be talking about a book review here. This one happens to be Malice by John Gwynne. Even the Brave Will Fall. This is book one of The Faithful and the Fallen. So there are 4 books, I believe, in this series. So as you can see, quite a thick, nice, interesting, lots and lots of pages. I believe it's 656 pages. Its current review score on Amazon.com is 4.2 out of 5 stars. It was released December 3rd, 2013, first of the series. So I'm going to do this review a little bit differently because I had a written review already on Goodreads. If you're not following me there, you should. ID Jester over on Goodreads. And then you can check out all my reviews over there as well. So what I want to do is just follow my guideline I had set up with my written review of this book. Basically give you a little bit of information about the book, then talk about the pros and cons, and we're going to go into more detail about it, and then I'll give you my final review score for it. So the long and the short is I liked the book. I didn't love the book. I found it a difficult experience to actually read this because there are some parts of the book that are so much better than other parts of this book. I was hoping for more even-paced story. There were some good and interesting things that happened, but it seemed like there was also some dead and downtime that's we're going to talk about here later on. And it took a while for the story to get going, which we're going to talk about again later on. So the pros, if you enjoy this book, if you liked it, then there will be 3 more books besides this one that you can pick up and delve into a huge fantasy story. So that's obviously a very good pro. John Gwynne is a very good writer. He has interesting moments, and I don't see anything wrong with his writing style. It fit perfectly in. There was very few times I was confused or not understanding what was going on. So that was obviously a very good pro. And you do feel some emotions for some of the characters, when the events happen to them. You do feel some pain and sorrow for some of the characters, and you do get kind of emotionally attached to some of the characters, and I will say some of them right now. Cons. There are a lot of characters and locations in this book. Being the first book of a new fantasy series, it's to be expected, but we're going to come to the problem with that a little bit later on in this review. The story took a long time to get going, and there are way, in my opinion, too many familiar fantasy elements that come into this book. So that's the pros and cons of it. And now we'll delve into what I just talked about in a longer, in-depth review. And it will try to be as spoiler-free as possible, although some of it I won't be able to cover up because of what we're going to be talking about. So if you don't want to know anything else, I would skip to about the end where you'll see my final score, but most of it will be spoiler free. All right, so Malice is a true epic fantasy story written by a very strong author, which we just talked about, and Mr. Gwynne holds nothing back throughout the story, laying out the story. Book is massive, and it's only book 1 of 4 in this series. The main story follows many different characters and gives you their specific thoughts and feelings during their chapter. So each chapter will be involved with one of the events that are going on with the characters. Most of the characters are somewhat interesting and have something unique about them that makes them obviously important to the story. There's many different kingdoms and many different lands that are explored through this book. And each of the different kingdoms has their own motivations and their own desires. So Kingdom A, Kingdom B, and Kingdom C are all got their own ideas of what they should or shouldn't be doing. With that said, the story is very much like medieval times. There's knights, there's castles, there's kings, there's queens. There are very few fantasy elements thrown in, like giants, prophecies, demons, and a little bit of magic so far as I can tell in this novel. In this series, there's only just been a little bit of extra magic thrown in. As you follow the story, it is not uncommon to have up to 8 to 10 different names or places or events that happen on a single page in this book. Every single page is littered with names and names and names and locations and places. So on page 1 of chapter 1, so this is the very first page of the book you're going to get into, these are the names you're going to come across: Corbin, Queen Elona, King Brennan, Herb, Ma, Ban, Darth, Duncarag, Gwyneth, Arden, Irdaran, and Cywin. So there are 12 different names on the first page of this book. So just as I mentioned, there are a lot of names, a lot of places, a lot of things that you're going to have to do. And I'm talking about just about every single page that if we randomly open this book up to, you're going to see names and lots of different things that you're going to have to keep, try and remember who's on which kingdom, who's going where, what they're doing, who likes who doesn't like who. So just bear that in mind. The story is interesting at times. The writing is very strong. But with that said, as I mentioned, there are way too many familiar fantasy themes. How many times have we heard this story before? The main character, Corbin, the number one character on the back of the book, Corbin, is a young boy coming of age. But he's being bullied and threatened by all of his friends because he is a weakling and he won't stand up for himself. So his sister has to protect him from the bullies. And now his only friend is the stable master, and he talks the stable master into helping him because he wants to become a knight and learn how to use his sword. And then one of the knights is going to befall him or befriend him, and then he's going to, kind of take him under his wing, so to speak, and help him out and kind of protect him from the other boys. And even his father comes in to help him and protect him from the other boys and their bullying. Stop. Fantasy authors out there, stop writing about that. If your character is supposed to be weak in the beginning of the story and not sure of himself and very timid and shy, and then by the end of the story or book 2 or book 3 of your novel or your fantasy series, he's now becoming a powerful knight or a powerful wizard or whatever he ends up becoming. There's other ways to do it other than he's being bullied by everyone else. And that's what I was talking about. Too many of the same fantasy tropes go into this book. And there's a lot of them that we won't get into because some of them will spoil the actual series. So I don't want to do that. But I thought it was important enough to let you guys know. So the writing is very nice. It's just there are down times in this book where you have these pages after pages after pages of, oh my God, yes, we understand Corbin is a wimp. We understand he can't stick up for himself. We understand all this. Why do we have to go on and on and on with it? Yes, we understand this over and over and over again. So that's what I was talking about earlier. There are parts in this book that are so much better than others. I think it could have been done other ways than the way it was done in this novel. Like I said, if your character is wimpy and shy and timid and won't stick up for himself, and you want to have that as your character in the beginning, there's other ways to do it other than him being bullied. Maybe his brothers and sisters are bullying him, or maybe he's got some kind of an ailment that prevents him from being strong or whatever. It don't have to be everybody in the kingdom wants to pick on the poor little boy because he won't stick up for himself. That's used way too much. It's time to think of something else, fantasy authors out there. Come up with some new ideas. Make something more interesting. I'm reading a book currently that does the same thing with the character. He is kind of weak in the beginning. He's not sure of himself, and it's done in a much better way than this book has done it. It seems like you're going through these page after page after page of reading about that, and it's not enjoyable. With that said, there are other times the book is very strong and very interesting, and there are elements that come in and will alter the story and change how things people feel about one another. I don't find any big, oh my gosh, moments or surprises or anything. It felt so familiar. Like I knew what was coming up. I knew what was going to happen. I knew character X and character Y didn't like each other because of this reason, then this was going to happen, and then, this is going to happen to character X, and this is going to happen to character Y, and how. And we knew this all before we even got to it. So when you're reading these pages through the book, it felt like downtime to me. It wasn't as strong as the interesting and in-depth elements that aren't used all the time. So if you fantasy authors, I will DNF your book from now on if I read about your character that's being bullied, because it's just so much overused. It just has no place in today's writing, and there's so many better ways to do it than what was introduced in this book. I also think the way the characters, locations, and everything was done in this book was just way too much. Again, this is just my personal opinion. This is my review. If you want to do a review, that's fine. Go ahead, read the book, give us a review, let us know. I could be wrong. As I said, there are 4.2 out of 5 stars. It's highly, highly recommended. There are many 5-star reviews. A lot of people really, really love this book. Maybe I'm wrong. I doubt it, because I only tell you the truth here on my channel, and we don't pull any punches here. I just tell you how I feel about it one way or the other. So it is interesting in parts. I would have liked a more interesting story flow throughout the whole book. There wasn't enough fantasy elements to keep me really enthralled in what was going on. It seemed like medieval Europe, and with a little bit of backstory about giants and prophecies, the chosen one, and all this malarkey that all the fantasy books ever written seem to be using nowadays, that there's a chosen one and there's a prophecy laid out that he's going to save us from certain destruction. Again, another fantasy trope that doesn't need to be in, and it's this book, possibly the series, I don't know, is littered with them from start to finish. And like I said, it kind of takes away from some of the more interesting things that don't follow standard fantasy protocol, which makes it unique and different and interesting. If you don't read a lot of fantasy and you don't know about all these elements, then you might be just fine with this book. Will I continue with the series? Was my last thought there on my Goodreads documentation. At the time, I had thought there was a possibility of doing it and continuing with the series to see if it gets any better, but I've kind of decided that I'm going to put this series aside. I've got too many other fantasy series coming in. We just did a book, or we did a couple series introduction video last week, and I'll be putting one out the next day or two because I've got some more fantasy series that just came in. So I've got a lot of things to be getting through and a lot of things to dive into, and I just didn't feel this kept me involved. And the main thing was Corbin, the main character. I have no, maybe it's because I'm just a heartless, old, grumpy man, but I had no sympathy. I had no connection to the main character, Corbin, whatsoever in this whole novel, because of the same old, I'm being picked on, and my sister has to protect me, my father has to protect me. I have to go to the one and only friend I have, which is the stable master, and he's going to help me get into the knights and learn how to do the training. And then one of the knights that he's friends with decides to help me out, and there are some interesting elements. I will say I did not DNF this, which is did not finish. If you're not part of uh, the lingo, the fantasy novel lingo, DNF. I did not DNF it. I did complete this whole book. So there are interesting elements. There are some parts to it that are keep you going. I just wish it would have been uh, more of that throughout the book as opposed to the same old fantasy tropes where it felt like downtime and it felt like the story was going exactly where I thought it was going to go the whole time I was reading it, unfortunately. So, how did I rate it? Well, that's a good question. Let's go ahead and give you my fancy dancy graphics here. If I can find the right file here. Come on. Here we go. All right. Bam. There we go. So I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was good, just not great. Again, you might want to go to Amazon, check out a chapter or two. You can read for free off of the Amazon website. You can check out the user reviews there as well as Goodreads. Read some of these reviews. It might be something that is right up your alley. For me, though, it just wasn't enough to connect me to the story. It wasn't enough to connect me to the characters. There was way too many ways John Gwynne introduced too much, too soon, too too involved in the story. There's ways to do that, which I'm currently, as I mentioned, I'm currently reading a novel that has just as many names and places and everything, but they're introduced in interesting ways because the characters are now, oh, walking down the road and they're talking about what had happened and, oh, remember when this happened, and they're introducing these names and places from the past in what they were doing as opposed to just, like I said, names and places, a random page here. So we have Merrick, we have Camlin, we have Corbin, we have Cywin, Cywen, we have Gwyneth, we have Tannen. That is all the names here in just the first 3 paragraphs, of the page. I haven't even got down. Let's see what else we have here. The Darkwood. We have Brath, Braith. We have Brina, Brina. We have Daw. We have Steadfast. We have, and I'm not even like scanning every single line. I'm just looking for things. I think I said Darkwood already, but I mean it's like 8 to 10 character names and places throughout every single page of this book. So for me, it was just way too much and didn't need to be. Again, we could randomly choose a page on this book and just look at it. It's littered with that over and over and over again. Now, if you love lots of different characters and interacting and talking about other characters and talking about this person, talking about this location, you might just love this book, and there are a lot of people that love this book. So maybe it's just me, but I'm going to rate this 3.5 stars out of 5. Because of the fantasy tropes, the fact that we have to find a way to get a character that is weak in the beginning, that isn't bullied by everyone he knows, and has his sister, his father, and only one friend in town that he can go to learn how to become a man. Okay? Let's find different ways to do that. That and the fact that there are way too many names and places throughout this book over and over and over in every single page. But if you enjoy that stuff, you may enjoy this book. And as I mentioned, this is only book 1 of 4. So you can pick this one up, read it, give it a shot. And if you enjoy it, there are 3 more just as thick, wonderful novels for you out there to enjoy. But for me, it's just not my cup of tea. Thanks so much for watching. Leave your thoughts, comments, suggestions down below. We'll see you guys for the next fantasy book review. Take care.